To understand the scale of this career, look at the total recorded songs by Elvis, the Beatles, and Michael Jackson. But this final, towering bar represents the Guinness World Record for the most recorded artist in history. It belongs to an Indian playback singer. Her name is Asha Bhosle. Her story begins in Sangli, Maharashtra. Raised in a musical family, she was 9 years old when her father, a classical singer and theater artist, passed away. His death left the family with no income. The immediate burden of financial survival fell onto the shoulders of young Asha and her older sister, Lata. This wasn't a choice made for fame. Her entry into the professional music world was driven by a desperate need for a steady paycheck. She began recording for Marathi films in 1943 and moved into Hindi cinema by 1948. In the playback system, her job was to record songs that actors would perform on screen. But the industry at the time was dominated by established singers with pristine, traditional voices, specifically her older sister, Lata Mangeshkar. Because directors gave lead roles to industry favorites, Asha was left with the tracks others rejected. She sang for the side characters, she sang for the vamps, and the low-budget film superstars ignored. Her personal life was just as difficult. At 16, she married against her family's wishes, and when the relationship failed, she was left as a struggling teenage mother in a highly competitive industry. Being forced to the edges of the music scene required her to do more with less. She had to stretch her vocal style to make these difficult, often experimental tracks work. She stopped trying to compete within the traditional style of the era. Instead, she leaned into the unconventional space she had been given. She found collaborators like O.P. Mayar and later R.ड Burman, whom she would marry in 1980. These composers were looking for a voice that could handle something other than the standard ballad. Together, they brought a Western-influenced energy to the screen. Songs like Dum Maro Dum and Pia Tu Ab To Aja introduced sharp, modern frequencies to Indian cinema that had never been heard before. She utilized her full range, injecting tracks with a raw, rhythmic energy and a level of vocal control that became her signature. By taking over the cabaret and pop space, she bypassed the industry's narrow expectations and became the voice of a different kind of character, the modern, independent woman. Despite her success, the industry attempted to label her exclusively as a pop singer, suggesting she lacked the depth required for high classical music. She responded by returning to her classical training to prove the versatility of her voice. For the film Umrao Jaan, she recorded a series of complex ghazals, including Dil Cheez Kya Hai. The performance required a transition from high-energy pop to the precise, emotional restraint of classical poetry. The validation was immediate. She won 2 National Film Awards for her classical performances, effectively quieting her critics. This proved that her skill wasn't limited by the genres the industry had created. She had demonstrated that she could master every category of music she touched. Recognition eventually came in the form of India's most significant civilian and cinematic titles, the Dada Saheb Phalke Award in 2000 and the Padma Vibhushan in 2008. But she didn't stop at music. Even after decades in the studio, she looked for new ways to build her legacy. She applied her energy to the culinary world, launching the Asha's restaurant chain. The brand grew from a single idea into a global business, with successful locations in cities like Dubai and Kuwait. This drive to create and expand is a constant theme in her life, whether she was behind a microphone or leading a business. Even now in her 90s, she still maintains the exact same vocal clarity and energy that defined her earliest recordings. She started her career picking up the industry's discarded, isolated tracks out of desperation. By the end, she had integrated those diverse sounds into a career that spanned music, business, and international borders. She reached these milestones because she consistently ignored the boundaries set by others. Asha Bhosle's impact is the result of relentless reinvention. She moved from the shadows of the industry to its center, not by following the rules, but by rewriting